pumpkin and pancetta risotto, one of my favorite autumn recipes. I really enjoy teaching people how to make a risotto because once you understand the technique behind it, you can really make the recipes your own and change it up according to the season and what you have in the fridge. So the basics you're going to need: some butter to cook the onion in. I prefer butter than olive oil for this specific recipe because it makes a better sauce. An onion of some description, could be leeks, red onion, shallots, anything from the onion family. Risotto rice. There's lots of different varieties of risotto rice, but this one happens to be arborio. And then very importantly, a glass of good quality white wine. More than often than not, you'll end up using a white wine, sometimes red, and even a glass of Prosecco works extremely well. But a word on cooking with wine: if you're not willing to drink it, don't cook with it. So if you're cooking with wine, you're concentrating down the flavours. So it's been hanging out in your fridge for 2 weeks, especially uncorked, it would have oxidized. So it's really not going to taste good at all. So if you want to be very authentic and use an Italian wine for this, you could use something like a Gavi or a Soave, would be really, really good. And then one of the very important elements of a risotto is a good quality stock. So I've got a good quality chicken stock in a pot on the hob, keeping warm. Turkey stock makes a particularly good risotto. Lots of good flavour in there. So come Christmas time, save your carcass and turn it into turkey stock for your risottos. So that's the basic of the risotto. But to make this risotto into the pancetta and pumpkin risotto, we of course need pancetta, which is Italian bacon, and our pumpkin. So you can use any good quality bacon for this. I have some pancetta, and I'm actually just going to bake it off in the oven, so I don't have to worry about it, and the pumpkin. So you can use a pumpkin or a butternut squash for this, and you want to peel it and dice it into cubes about that size, so that it's not too big in comparison to the grains of the risotto rice. Now, pumpkin has got a very high water content, so it benefits from being roasted. It goes beautiful and brown and caramelized and brings out the sweetness of the recipe. I've got more than enough pumpkin here that I need. So to help crisp it up and caramelize it, a little bit of good quality olive oil, very important, extra virgin olive oil. And to add a little Tuscan twist to the recipe, I've got fennel seeds. So fennel have a slight licoricey flavour, but it's not overpowering, it's not strong, and it is very typical of Tuscan cuisine. So they'll roast up with butternut squash or pumpkin that you're using, and just add an extra dimension to it. A bit of black pepper and a little bit of salt, not a huge quantity. So I've got a hot oven, 200 degrees just prepared. So the squash will take about 15 to 20 minutes to roast up, depending on how small you've cubed it. Also depend on the variety of pumpkin. So once you see it going golden and brown, you'll know it's done. So in this goes. And I'm going to cheat and put in the pancetta too. If it's very fatty, you can drain it on kitchen towel when it comes out. Okay, so I can forget about that for a few minutes and move on to the nitty-gritty of how to make a good risotto. Okay, my top tips for making a good risotto. So get yourself set up. You need one pot on the hob that's going to keep your chicken stock or turkey stock at a low temperature. Don't be bubbling it away, you'll end up with no stock. And then one pot to make the actual risotto in. So I'm going to add my butter to the pot and melt that down first. Now it might seem a bit strange using butter in an Italian recipe, but the butter works with the starch from the risotto grains to form this gorgeous, creamy, silky sauce before you've even added any Parmesan cheese. So onion in. You want to cook the onion until it's clear and translucent and lovely and soft. We're not looking for colour on the onion. So this will take a few minutes, so just be patient. Risotto is all about patience. It's not a quick meal, but very therapeutic at the same time. Now, some risotto recipes require that at this point you're going to add some celery. So you fry off the celery and the onion together. Personally, I just prefer the onion, no celery. And of course you can add garlic. Depending on the recipe, you may and may not wish to add any garlic. So now for the risotto rice to go in. The next step is quite important. Pour in all the risotto rice, and we're going to toast the risotto rice with the butter and the onion. So what this does, it gives a lovely warm toasty flavour to the rice, very subtle, but it also prepares the rice to start accepting liquid. So if you have this little step in the beginning, it's just another thing you can do to make sure that the end result is really good. And now to the good bit. Glass of wine. One for me, one for the risotto. That goes in. The wine is a really important element in the risotto. Because the sauce is so creamy, it can be a little bit boring and it can dilute the flavors down. So what happens by adding wine to the risotto is the alcohol actually cooks off and you're just concentrating down the flavors that are naturally present in the wine. So it gives a fabulous taste to risotto. So don't leave this part out. Even if you don't drink wine, it's not going to taste like wine. So what you're looking for is you'll see puddles of liquid in the pot and they're gradually going to start absorbing into the rice. So it's at this point that you're going to really start the stirring and minding and nurturing of your risotto. Because once those puddles of liquid are gone and it's quite dry, it's going to start sticking to the bottom of the pot, you're going to take one ladle of warm stock at a time, big ladle, and pour it into the risotto. And just a tip, use a plastic ladle rather than a metal one, because you'll find after sitting on the hob for a while, that's going to get quite hot. And you're just going to be patient. It's going to take about 20 minutes roughly of pouring in the ladle of stock, stirring it, which is going to massage the rice. Massaging and stirring of the rice means you can help release the starch from the risotto rice. So the grains are going to plump up and fill up with stock, and the starch is going to come off and mix with the liquid and the butter we used initially, and it's going to form a really creamy sauce. So this is the real tip to making risotto rather than adding in loads of cream and butter at the end, which of course you're welcome to do. It's a typical Italian thing to do, to add cold butter at the end of the risotto cooking time. Okay, can you see that all the puddles of wine are gone and the risotto is actually starting to stick to the bottom of the pan? So this is the indicator that it needs a ladle of stock. So now here is the therapeutic or repetitive action that starts depending on how you look at it. So no risotto recipe will be able to definitively tell you how much rice you need versus how much liquid. This is all part of the technique and the method. So you really need to get a feel for it, because you don't want a risotto that's overcooked and too mushy. In fact, I prefer one that's slightly underdone, because then by the time I've served it, it's just right. You've got about 20 minutes from finishing off your risotto to serving it to really get it plated up, because it just goes gloopy and horrible after that. Okay, let's give this guy a taste. It's looking good, looking lovely and thick and glassy and unctuous. So what I'm looking for is the rice to just be cooked through, so still firm, and no crunchy birdseed bit in the middle. Perfect. There is a puddle of liquid left there that will be absorbed by the time I plate up. So get it off the heat. And it's at this point that in Italy you can add lots of cold butter to it. It forms extra sauce. And of course you can add loads of Parmesan cheese. Very important. I love cheese. Our pancetta and our pumpkin will be ready, so we'll get them out the oven. Fantastic. There we go. So lovely crispy pancetta and caramelized pumpkin squash. So seasoning wise, I don't think this needs any salt whatsoever. So as we said, our Parmesan is salty, our stock is salty. So plenty of Parmesan. So a lovely little fine grater, and I'm going to add black pepper. Now you will see the speckles in the risotto with the black pepper, but I think black pepper is a much nicer flavour than white pepper for risotto. I typically use white pepper in Asian cooking, and for risotto, it's black pepper all the way. You can see I like cheese. I'm going to carry on going. Okay. I'm going to add more cheese when I plate it up. So we're going to put some of the pancetta through and leave the rest for plating up. Now this has turned out to be lovely and crispy, not too fatty, so we're good to go. The squash, and leave a little bit. So be gentle when you're stirring it, because our squash has now become quite soft, so we don't want to mush it all together. The other flavours I've used a lot in risottos using pancetta and pumpkin would be sage and rosemary. So if you don't have fennel seeds, don't let that stop you. Get a nice deep dish. So this would be a main course sort of dish, but I am going to put more of a starter portion in it. What I absolutely adore is a handful of fresh rocket on the top. So I like rocket with hot dishes. I think it works extremely well. So some roasted pumpkin, break up the risotto a bit, add a few more cubes. Happy days. Wonderful. And then you're also going to need your block of Parmesan cheese and a vegetable peeler for your Parmesan shavings. So carry on going, depending on how much you'd like. I'm a huge cheese fan. A little bit of black pepper. And voila, pancetta and pumpkin risotto.